tonight.
And for this, we are deeply sorry.
The federal government formally apologizes to Peepeekisis Cree Nation for carrying out a radical social engineering experiment.
Thank you, Saskatchewan.
Also, Conservative leadership hopeful Pierre Poilievre skips today's leadership debate in favor of a campaign stop in Regina. Plus, how climate change is warming Canada's great expanse of boreal forest, bringing a greater risk of fire and disease.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Wednesday, August 3rd, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. A historic apology from Ottawa today for Peepeekisis Cree Nation. It was home to the File Hills Farm Colony, a failed social experiment conducted for half a century by the federal government. Jennifer Francis was in the community today for the national apology.
Ipaksimoyak, umaikwa kakwi matsi, mioayak, ikotutsi kakiao.
Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller issued his apology first in Cree, then in English.
I'm here on behalf of the Government of Canada to formally apologize to Peepeekisis Cree Nation and to all community members for the File Hill Colony Scheme.
The community has been waiting for this apology for decades. The colony scheme was a radical social experiment. It began in the late 1800s, engineered by Indian agent William Graham. He feared residential school students would regress into their traditional ways. So graduates were moved onto stolen land, called the File Hills Colony, to farm. The First Nations people were subjected to arranged marriages, government inspections, and the restriction on their movements and cultural practices. They were not allowed to return to their home communities, and many of them ended up losing band membership. Chief Francis Dieter says this fractured the community and lives.
Peepeekisis membership continues to face social ills such as drug and alcohol addictions, violence, and suicides as a result of band division. These divisions created by an unlawful change to band membership and also the subdivision of the reserve lands continue to be felt today.
Enoch Poitras is the oldest living chief of Peepeekisis. He says the fact that few people speak the Cree language shows these policies and experiments rob them of their identity.
We're not who we were and who we were born to be.
Our ancestors lived through a lot of hard times for us to be here.
Colin Stonechild says it's time for understanding and forgiveness.
If we don't have forgiveness, there's never going to be reconciliation. If we can't let go of the traumas that we had without forgiveness, we'll never heal.
In December 2020, the Peepeekisis Cree Nation voted to accept a settlement worth $150 million from Ottawa. This will go towards buying land. Jennifer Francis, CBC News, Peepeekisis First Nation.
Pope Francis is once again asking forgiveness for the abuses that Indigenous people suffered in Canada's residential schools. During his general weekly audience today at the Vatican, the Pope dedicated his talk to his trip to Canada.
It was unlike other journeys. In fact, the main motivation was to meet the Indigenous peoples, to express to them my closeness and my sorrow, closeness of the church, my sorrow, and to ask forgiveness for the harm done to them.
Francis apologized at several stops during what he called his pilgrimage of penitence in Canada last week. Today, he again spoke about the role many members of the Catholic Church had in the harms done to Indigenous people. On the last day of his Canadian trip, the Pope met with several residential school survivors in Iqaluit and heard their stories. Today, he called it a very painful moment and said, quote, "We need to give face to our errors and our sins." The University of Saskatchewan says it's going to rely on Indigenous governments to stop non-Indigenous people from taking jobs and scholarships intended for Indigenous people. The new policy was announced last week. It follows a scandal at the U of S after a CBC investigation revealed a high-profile professor claiming to be Indigenous came from entirely European ancestry. But as Jeff Leo reports, the new policy will rely on documentation that can be controversial.
Last fall, we broke a story about high-profile Professor Carrie Bourassa, who worked at the University of Saskatchewan. For years, she claimed to be Indigenous.
I'm Bear Clan. I'm an Anishinaabe Métis from Treaty 4 territory.
She was seen as the leading Indigenous health scientist in the country, but our investigation showed that her ancestors all traced back to Europe. She was placed on leave from her job at the university, and earlier this year, she retired. So up until that point, whenever the university had a job or a scholarship that was targeted specifically to Indigenous people, they worked on the honor system, essentially self-declaration. But a task force of Indigenous people that was struck by the university said that self-declaration is no longer acceptable. They said from now on, the university should be looking for proof that someone's Indigenous, and that proof should come from Indigenous governments, not from the applicant. Mark Arcand, who's the tribal chief of the Saskatoon Tribal Council, says when it comes to status Indians, proving that you are truly Indigenous is a relatively simple matter. He says all you have to do is show your status card, which proves that you have at least one parent who is a status Indian.
But our policy procedure over here now at U of S says you've got to prove that you're status Indian. And if you can't prove it, that means you don't get employed here, right? So the ownership lands on the individual to justify and prove their credibility or their lineage, we'll say, through that process.
As for Métis people, the process is quite similar. All they need to do is show their citizenship card in the Métis Nation, Saskatchewan. Now, if they don't have a citizenship card and they don't want to be citizens of the Métis Nation, there's a process for them as well. They can work with a genealogist from the Métis Nation to prove that they do in fact have Métis ancestry.
So they don't have to be a citizen of Métis Nation, Saskatchewan. They just have to meet the criteria.
This whole issue is not without its controversy. There are some people in the Indigenous community that say it's completely inappropriate to force applicants to prove their identity using Western colonial documentation, which has been imposed by the federal government. That whole debate will likely play out over the next few years. There are other complexities that have to be sorted out as well. For example, there are non-status Indians who don't have a community that can vouch for them, and there are Indigenous people from other countries who also may be applying here in Saskatchewan. In order to sort through all those complexities, the university has established a committee of Indigenous people to sort through those issues. Jeff Leo, CBC News, Regina.
Yesterday, we brought you stories of former students alleging they were subjected to bizarre rituals, violent discipline, and abuse at a Saskatoon private Christian school. Today, the NDP opposition is joining the call for the province to freeze all funding to that school. Jason Warwick reports.
A CBC News investigation has revealed at least 18 former students have gone to police, alleging they were abused at the Christian Centre Academy, now called Legacy Christian Academy. They shared stories of being spanked with large wooden paddles, leaving them bruised and limping. Others spoke of solitary confinement, coercion, and traumatizing rituals, such as exorcisms, to cure students thought to be possessed by demons.
There was a lot that went on there. That was not okay, and it's taken a long time for people to speak up, so yeah. I mean, it was a cult. It was essentially a cult. It had all the markings of that.
Students are calling on the provincial government to freeze all public subsidies and public funding to the school and the adjacent church until a full investigation can be completed. In the most recent school year, more than $700,000 in public funding went to the Legacy Christian Academy.
And a government that doesn't prioritize the health.
Today, the NDP opposition said it agrees with the students and congratulated them for finding the courage to speak out.
And you know, when I read these stories about brave former students that came forward, it brings up many emotions. I think first, heartbroken to think that this was the experience that shaped young lives, and angry that these allegations, it appears, were brought to the minister only to be ignored.
That we're like.
The office of Education Minister Dustin Duncan confirms it has known about the allegations since June, but no action will be taken until the police investigation is complete. The NDP says that's unacceptable.
These are very serious allegations being brought forward by these former students, and we believe that action must be taken.
Minister Duncan was not available for an interview. School officials have declined multiple interview requests, but sent an email saying things are much different at the school now. They say everyone is welcome and anyone who feels they were abused should contact police. Jason Warwick, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Statistics Canada says Regina had the highest homicide rate in Canada last year. Its annual report looking at crime severity found the Queen City had 15 homicides in 2021. That works out to 5.67 homicides for every 100,000 people. Regina topped the list of 35 major cities, edging out Thunder Bay and Winnipeg. Saskatoon was further down the list with 8 homicides. StatsCan also measures crime by number using its crime severity index, which gives more weight to more serious crimes. Saskatchewan's number for 2021 was 147. That is twice the national average and higher than any other province. Pierre Poilievre didn't take part in the Conservative leadership debate today. Instead, he's here in Saskatchewan and at this hour making an appearance in Regina.
It's great to be back in the God-blessed prairies. Good to be with you.
That's Poilievre at the Atlas Hotel just a few minutes ago. Poilievre had previously expressed his unhappiness with the decision to hold a third debate for the party's leadership. His decision to skip it will cost him a hefty $50,000 fine as per party rules. His competitor, Leslyn Lewis, also took a pass on the third debate. Poilievre's trip to Saskatchewan includes stops in the Battlefords, Prince Albert, and Saskatoon. The province is making arrangements to welcome another humanitarian flight from war-torn Ukraine. The first flight carrying 230 people arrived on July 4th. A government press release says the next flight is tentatively scheduled for 1 week from today. The August 10th flight will deliver another 230 Ukrainians. At that point, the total number of displaced Ukrainians in our province will reach 1,500. A Canadian Forces Snowbird pilot is safe and reportedly not injured after an incident during takeoff in northern BC yesterday. The pilot conducted an emergency landing after the plane apparently stalled on takeoff. The pilot managed to turn around and land again, but blew past the end of the runway. It happened in Fort St. John at the airport. 2 snowbirds were in the area for an air show. Officials say the cause of the incident is not known, and it is under investigation. A live look now at Mosaic Stadium in Regina, where fans are making their way inside. Today, the Queen City is hosting a friendly U23 soccer match between Sunderland AFC and Toronto FC2. The game kicks off at 6:30 right after our show. Ethan will join us from there with the forecast right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. There is renewed outrage over the business practices of Ticketmaster, triggered by ongoing and long-standing complaints about the ticket brokerage firm's so-called dynamic pricing. Tickets for an upcoming Bruce Springsteen tour recently sold for more than $5,000. Thomas Dagler looks into the practice, the complaints, and the apparent lack of solutions.
Having made a fortune as a working-class music icon, Bruce Springsteen suddenly has some lifelong fans vowing, "I'll never give this man another dollar," and others tweeting #corporate greed.
It is a hard pill to swallow when it's a guy like Springsteen.
When tickets went on sale for Springsteen's highly anticipated tour with the E Street Band, fans were shocked to see prices as high as $5,500 US. Consider some tickets to Elton John's upcoming Toronto show are going for nearly $2,500, with premium seats for the weekend in Vancouver on sale for even more.
We are seeing these large companies that have next to no competition that are sort of able to charge whatever they want, and they can justify it away because, there's no alternative.
At the heart of the controversy, the entertainment behemoth Ticketmaster and its near monopoly on sales for big shows and sports. The company allows marked up resales, but also uses so-called dynamic pricing, with some tickets automatically going up when demand is high. This business consultant says Ticketmaster's strategy ensures more money goes to artists instead of resellers.
We could pretend that people aren't paying $5,000 to go to Springsteen if we like, but they were anyway. It's just a matter of who gets it.
From the days of New Kids on the Block to Justin Bieber, concert goers have long complained of rising prices. But now, as fans again flock to shows, prices have surged, with one recent report suggesting hot tickets across North America have risen in price nearly 20% since 2019.
I don't think that's an easy one to solve, especially if an artist can only perform in that city for one night.
Ticketmaster didn't respond to our questions and hasn't explained how it sets prices. Springsteen is still selling out concerts with enough fans willing to pay a premium. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac, making back to busy easy.
Well, it's a beautiful night for a soccer game in Regina. Our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now from Mosaic Stadium.
Yes, that is right, Sam. We are down here at Mosaic Stadium for the Toronto FC2 versus Sunderland AFC game. The game kicks off in just a little while from here. Kickoff at 6:30. And we got a pretty nice evening for it. Let's take a look at current temperatures now. We are seeing the warmest of the weather in the southwest part of the province. You can see that temperature gradient moving to the northeast, and kind of a cooler evening in store. And it looks like that cooler weather is going to stay in place through portions of central and northern Saskatchewan as we go through the next 24 to 48 hours. Here we have a ridge which is going to be building in some hot weather to the south, but for central and northern portions of the province, you can see that trough, that upper trough starting to build in, and that will be bringing our cooler temperatures. But for the south of the province, it is warm tomorrow. Temperatures getting into the mid-30s, and we are looking at humidex values getting around there and even into the upper 40s as well as we head through tomorrow afternoon. That is going to mean our fire risk is increasing. We're looking at high to extreme fire danger tomorrow in much of the south of the province. And the north, rain showers have been keeping you in a low to moderate risk for the most part. And actually, as we look at our fire situation for tomorrow, we are, or if this is actually for today, we are looking at a pretty good situation. Only 16 fires at this point. None of those are uncontained, and we are sitting just above the 5-year average. And for the north of the province, where the majority of those fires have been, we are going to continue to see the rain over the next 24 to 48 hours, keeping that away. We are watching thunderstorms and showers move in this evening. Those will drop off after midnight for the central part of the province. Then we get to tomorrow, and we could see thunderstorms for much of us as the heat and humidity builds in. We're also looking at another low pressure system building, and this one from Alberta, which is going to bring significant rainfall to mainly the Churchill region of the province. That is still with us as we head into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, and that's likely when we're going to see rain at times heavy in that portion of the province. And then that low begins to move out to our east, but it will take its time. We probably won't get much clearing for the north until we hit the weekend. Rainfall totals over the next 48 hours, we are looking especially on that Churchill region between Buffalo Narrows and Pelican Narrows, possibly between 30, 40, maybe even up to 50 millimeters of rain. Heavier amounts to the west of us in Alberta. And with that system moving in, wind gusts will increase. Tomorrow afternoon, they will be very strong in the southwest portion of the province, gusting up to 60 kilometers an hour out of the west. And then we see them continue with us on Friday as the remnants of that low pressure system continues to bring gusts up to between 50 and 60, maybe even 70 kilometers an hour. Our extended forecast in Regina, a windy but sunny period for the next little while here, save for possibly some thunderstorms tomorrow. We'll keep an eye on how severe those might get. A real cool down as we head into the beginning of the weekend, but then temperatures will rebound and get closer to seasonal. Saskatoon, a high of 32 tomorrow, very warm day, and temperatures will begin to drop as we head into the weekend, but also some drier conditions, warming up, and again, Sam, not too bad of an evening here if you're coming down to Mosaic Stadium.
All right, thanks, Ethan.
She's
going to take it. Bedford North's going to try and stop her. Tibiasu drives the basket for one. She's put it up. She's put it in. Canada have done it.
Wow, that was Canada with the buzzer beater for a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in England. The play was reviewed and the bucket was good. Canada currently has 46 medals and is sitting in third place. We'll be back after the break. Canada's boreal forest covers more than 300 million acres. It's a staple on the Canadian landscape, stretching from Yukon all the way east toward Newfoundland. As we continue to see climate change, this vast forest is changing too. Meteorologist Christy Kleimenhege has more.
Canada is home to the world's largest relatively untouched forest. The Boreal Zone is home to Earth's coldest forest and stretches across Canada and around the globe, covering 1.9 billion hectares globally. And the Boreal Forest is important.
It not only serves as a huge carbon store, but a thriving ecosystems for plants and animals, including over 100 species of birds, mammals like moose and caribou, and 3.7 million people.
Between wildfire, weather, and other factors, the boreal forest is constantly changing, but climate change is bringing a new level of transformation.
If we think about drought, if we think about fire, if we think about insects, disease, this large tract of forest is contending with all of these environmental threats all the time. But under climate change, at least some of these threats are more severe.
As our climate changes, we can expect milder winters and hotter summers. That means a higher risk of drought and wildfire.
So what does that mean for our forest's future?
As the climate continues to warm, that the boreal biome might shift northward, as well as potentially a contraction of the forest along the southern margins.
With growth to the north and recession to the south, the future health and size of the boreal forest system will come down to a matter of balance and timing.
A lot of species that are depending on older, mature forests, especially coniferous forest in particular, there's just less of that habitat going to be available in the short term.
So with all of this being said, is it too late to save our boreal forests? While some of the changes we're seeing may be inevitable at this point, we can still have an impact.
We can work to protect our boreal forests, especially those that have the best chances of lasting, those with plenty of local water sources and more sheltered topography.
Was it ever too late to do something better? I would say no. I'm a little bit of an optimist, but we can never wind back the clock.
Christy Kleimenhege, CBC News, Edmonton.
Sunshine dominates our forecast tomorrow. 20 degrees already at 8 a.m. in Regina. Those southwest gusts will begin to pick up. We get to our noon hour and that sunshine sticks around, getting close to 30 degrees. That humidex starting to pick up as well, but keep in mind southwest wind gusts will be close to 50 kilometers an hour, keeping us a bit cool. A little cloudier in Saskatoon, 18 degrees, mainly sunny conditions. And as we head to your noon hour there, we're at 27 southeast winds, not quite as bad as we will see them in the southern part of the province. If you are coming to the game this evening here at Mosaic Stadium, again, Toronto FC2 versus Sunderland AFC, some great under 23 soccer or football, I suppose, if you are British. We are looking at 21 with a mix of sun and clouds, some nice light winds as well. And Sam, the crowd has started building in here. We are getting underway and kickoff is just seconds away.
All right, thanks, Ethan. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/sask or /Saskatoon or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel. Ethan will be back with more local news and weather tonight at 11. Thank you so much for watching and have a great night.